Okay, so working with the hands, the very first thing to sort of consider is the relationship of the hand to the arm. So if we come down, the arm, we have the radius that's going to go to your thumb. Okay, and you have the ulna that's going to go to your pinky. They join at the wrist, and then the first group of bones that you have here, you have 8 of them are your carpals. Okay. In addition to that, you also have these like little tiny bones that we all have a different quantity of called pisiforms. And those little bones are like little protrusions, and they help to keep tendons from getting trapped in joints. So you have your carpals, okay, and then you're going to come down here. And you have your metacarpals. Okay. Then a measurement from here to here, here to here, will give you the length of the phalanges. And your pinky is kind of smaller, so it's kind of a shape like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then your thumb comes about halfway through. So these are your phalanges. Okay, and then these are phalanges here. So you have in your digits, you have 3 phalanges, and then your thumb, you have 2. Okay. So first measurement to remember that's important is the distance from the wrist to your knuckles, your first knuckles here. And then from those knuckles to the tip of the finger is a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you take your hand, you measure that distance, and then measure up, it should be relatively a 1-to-1 relationship, no matter what the proportional nature of your hands are in terms of like if you have big hands or small hands, etc. Okay. So this is a 1-to-1. Now, there's another really important measurement that you can get, and it's really easy to in terms of helping us to think about our hands. So in our digits, if we start off the digit as a rectangle, and I sound tired, and I'm sorry, I am a bit sleepy, but I am drinking 4 shots of espresso, so I'm hoping it will kick in before the end of class. If we divide this in half, okay, we get a 1-to-1 ratio. So this is the last 2 phalanges and the first long phalange here versus here. Now, if we divide this in half, we get a 1-to-1 ratio. So this phalange is equal in a 1-to-1 ratio to this one. These 2 are equal to a 1-to-1 relationship to that one. And the whole phalanges are equal to a 1-to-1 ratio to that. So you've got some simple technical measurements that you can utilize. Okay, so the tops of fingers are angular. The bottom of fingers are rounded. Okay. This is your padding versus the top. The reason that is because you've got a lot of padding on the bottom of your fingers and a lot less padding on the top. And so this is much more like the bone versus the padding. Okay. We are one of the only creatures on the earth that can do precision grip. So us and other primates can do this precision grip. You know, other animals cannot do that. Now, of course, all animals, you know, a lot of animals use tools. You can watch a crow or a raven use a tool. So humankind used to be defined by the concept that it was a tool maker and a tool user, but we know that's completely false, right? Like we began to have that awareness with Jane Goodall, you know, who it took some time for people to believe her because she was a woman. But she was also not she went to Africa as a researcher whose position previously had been as like an assistant. So like she lacked, you know, you know, the scientific community felt like she lacked two credentials, right? One, she was a woman, and the other being that she wasn't like a trained researcher. But she starts to see chimpanzees using tools, and she breaks open this whole notion, right? That other animals use tools. And we've all seen ravens do it, otters do it. I've watched many raccoons do it. Like, so that used to be the defining difference between Homo sapiens sapiens and other animals, other species. So now they define Homo sapiens sapiens as like the art makers, which is kind of interesting considering how little people think about art. But I showed you in that video in the very beginning that that's not true either, right? That all animals, given the ability, you know, have the can create art, and we see that in fish, right, that make patterns on the bottom of the ocean that are designed to pull in a mate. We see that in other primates who were given paintbrushes, you know, and elephants, and you know, there's just a lot there that doesn't act as a defining force either, and that's problematic because eventually it will show that the humans are not any different from other animals, right? And we might have to respect them. Sorry, I don't know how I got there, but I did. The thing that, you know, I was leading there with was like this precision grip, right? And so if you think about what happens when you use this precision grip, is that your thumb has to come up and come over. And then this finger here typically bends up. And then this finger here typically creates some type of like pivot point or some type of stabilizer. And so that tells you a little bit about the length of the thumb, because the thumb, as it comes over to the other digits, requires this finger to bend in order to pinch. Okay, so you can start to think about like what would that movement require in terms of the anatomy of the hand. Well, when our thumb meets that finger, right, the index finger, as it comes in, it creates a negative space. So that tells us that they're different lengths. Now, how do you determine what that difference in length is? Well, it's all about this angle here and this angle here. This angle is the tip of the thumb to the second joint. And then this one is to the tip, and we can see how they differ. This is usually drawn by people as a curve. Okay, so like the curve to the top of the thumb comes through here, like so. Now, if you close your thumb, you can see that the top of the thumb is quite close to that joint. And so you need to make sure that when this thumb closes, that it would be very similar in height to that. So this helps you to get a height. Okay, if I measure the two phalanges of my thumb, they equal this bone. This phalange is equal to the length of the two phalanges in the thumb. So that's another way to think and remember it. So let's just look at a finger. So there's one phalange. So say that finger's bending. There's another phalange. This needs to be half of that. And then another phalange. This needs to be equal to that. Okay. So when things start to bend, they don't lose their ratio. Okay. Now, as things become foreshortened, like if I have a finger and it's pointing towards me, because of the perspective, I might see something like this. With the tip of that finger coming towards me first, depending on my point of view. Okay, so then that ratio is changed because of the foreshortening. But if you're looking at a finger, basically from eye level or similar straight on, those ratios are always going to remain the same. So what you want to think about is kind of like, I call it kind of like the rake. 1 metacarpal, 2 metacarpals, 3 metacarpals, 4 metacarpals, 5, 2 phalanges, 1 phalange, 1 phalange, 1 phalange, 1 phalange, curve, equal distance 2, 2, 2, curve. Okay, so I call it like a rake. You can see why it looks like a rake, right? So once we understand the structure, then we can start to build the forms. Okay, so inside the phalange, a phalange kind of looks like a little chicken bone. Like that. Then the finger, right, is going to come around that. Okay, so you can pretty much, if the hand is going straight on like this, you can pretty much build the finger around that phalange in the center of the form. Okay. And so the structure, these are almost like, kind of like French fries, right? That's kind of how I think about them. So coming straight on is one thing. What happens when the hand is, perhaps turned a little bit? Well, then think about going back to our 2-point cube. So if this is the length of the metacarpals, then that tells you that's going to be the length of the phalanges. Pinky's usually smaller, so it kind of looks like this. Think about a mitten shape. And then we'd get the front of the fingers. And then the thumb would basically be coming out from here. We'd see the front of the thumb. And then the side of the thumb inwards. Once you've identified where these things are taking place in terms of, remember that that's going to be about halfway, and then that's going to go there. Then you can go in and start to shape them. So 4 knuckles, right? And then the thumb. And then hard on the top, soft on the bottom. Oops, a little bit off there, wrong. And you want to think about how you can see that edge versus the top. So like here on the thumb, maybe we'd even see inside there as well as there. So you want to think about these planes. That's why you're doing a plane portrait recreation, because we want to think about planes. So like the hand is connected to the arm, which can basically be seen at first as a rectangle. So this goes back to what we were thinking about with perspective, where you must understand the difference between the side plane here in order to draw the top plane. Now, one of the things I love about Boucher, who I'm recreating all these drawings from, is the way that he would draw hands was very gestural. And so like sometimes I'll be looking at an incredible drawing by Boucher, and the hand will look like that. And when I see that gesture of that hand, my brain knows it's a hand. Okay. And what this speaks to me here about is the energy and the romance of the hand versus like a really highly defined, anatomically correct phalange to phalange to phalange, right? But to understand that, you have to be able to do that. But the one thing that you want to do when you draw hands is you want to stay away from creating claws, okay? Claws, often it will be like this, like I'll say, okay, like draw your hands, and everyone will take these like really like rigid poses, okay? And then they were trying to draw those poses, and because the pose is rigid, the drawing becomes rigid, it looks like a claw. Instead, you want to relax the hand and draw the hand in relaxed forms, because then it's going to have, a softness to it that's not going to look awkward. Okay. Now we all have like different types of things. Okay. I have a friend who has one of her thumbs is very, very small. Right. I have what they call hitchhiker's thumbs. Okay. And then I also have like a joint thing happening where like I can drop my joint in. So, we used to call it double jointed. Okay. So like I can basically hide my thumb like that. And then on the other side, that's what it would look like, versus if you couldn't do that, it would look more like, I can't do it more maybe down like that, which has a different appearance to it on this side. So like I do these types of things with my fingers. I also can accidentally very much like lock my hands, my fingers, my phalanges. And so when I draw my hand, if I draw that, it's not going to look right, right? So I have to be conscious when I pose my hand of what I'm doing with it, and so that it looks as accurate as it can look. And so that's something which we want to think about. Excuse me. You know, drawings of hands like this or something, that's going to be a really difficult drawing to capture correctly, and the viewer will feel it. So you want to think about how you put your hands so that you're not creating a situation where sort of that natural awkwardness of the hand, which is part of its nature, can come into play. Okay. So if you want to study your right hand and you draw right-handed and you want to study your right hand from life, then you would put your left hand forward into a mirror, and then you'd have the reflection, which would mimic the idea of the right hand. So, struggling, sorry. On your paper, let's draw a hand. Okay, so let's take your red watercolor pencil. Okay, so start off with the radius and the ulna. Let's pull the hand. Let's just do a nice straightforward hand here. So radius and ulna, you can indicate them right now as a rectangle. Then you have your carpals, so another smaller rectangle. And then basically you have like a trapezoid shape like this. Okay, so then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 phalanges. And then from here to here is equal to here. Then you've got there, 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 and there. It's a curve. And then you could just bring that up like that. A bit higher. Okay, then take your blue. Okay, and then just right now with rectangles, rectangle, define that line into the wrist. Rectangle. Now the ring middle finger is a bit longer, rectangle. Ring finger's a little shorter, rectangle. And then the pinky's even shorter than that, rectangle. So this is a knuckle rounded. This is a knuckle rounded, 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 rounded. This is a knuckle rounded, 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 rounded. Pay attention to where they are, because if this finger is longer, it should have a higher knuckle. If this finger is shorter, it should have a lower knuckle. This finger is much shorter, it should have a lower knuckle. Divide this space in half, knuckle, same thing, higher knuckle, lower knuckle, quite low knuckle. Okay. Okay, let's do it again. This time, let's do this. Let's bring our rectangle here for our arm. Like that. So 2-point perspective. Okay. And we have another smaller rectangle. That's our wrist, our carpals. And then something like that. That's our phalanges. So we'd see here, we'd see there. So we can divide that space in half, and then that space in half. Should be a bit lower. Then we're going to pull right through here our thumb. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Extend that up. Those are your phalanges. Go to your blue. And then once you've got your blue, we can round things out. So we're going to dip down into the wrist and then come out. Push into the wrist here. Push into the wrist. Okay, and then here we're going to pull this shape out, smooth it out for the thumb and transition into the wrist, keeping awareness of that front and that edge there. Okay, then we're going to push up here, straight, harder edges on the top, rounder edges on the bottom. Same thing, straighter edges on the top, rounder edges on the bottom. Now, the more you do this, the more you start to feel the proportions of like how, like the width and the height of the fingers. So if I was to retrace that, I would have something that looked like this. This. Here, just a bit too thick. Like that. Then you could just add your shadows. Okay, now here they would go up to a higher height, and so that would make it look a bit more dimensional. Okay. Okay. So same thing, red and blue. Okay. Now what I want you to do is I want you to sort of do something where you have your hand like this, your non-dominant hand, and then just drop down one or two of the fingers so that you have like a softer hand. Okay. And what I want you to do is I want you to start by drawing like so. My wrist is, my arm is here. Here's the interior edge of my hand. That comes to my carpals and then up to my knuckles. And then my wrist is in here and then out of my thumb. And you see how I'm basically right now, I'm just building the structure from like hard angled shapes. And then this is here and that comes down. But what I'm doing is always thinking about the proportions that we talked about and the hard versus soft edge that we talked about. And then this is going to come in here. And this is going to come out and connect to that. There's an angle there to that knuckle, like so. And there's my edge. And then this is going to come down. There's an angle here. And so that's going to come down to here. Okay. And then coming out of here, there's that knuckle. And then that comes down. This finger is shorter than that finger, like so. And then there's this back knuckle. The knuckle is there. Sorry, the back finger, the knuckle is there. And then it's going to come out and connect here. There's that knuckle. So there's an angle here. And there's an angle here. And there's an angle here. And that's a giant thumb. So I want you to try to do something like that. And as you can see, it's mostly just sort of these harder edged rectilinear shapes. Okay. There's a nice negative space in here that I can look at. And then I want to come in and I look at these negative spaces in here. And I want to look at this negative space in here. And I want to look at this negative space in here. So go ahead and try that. Okay, then when you're ready, go in and go to your blue. And then continue to define your drawing. So like here's an edge that connects down inside here. So I'm going to assign that this value here. This is the edge for the thumb here. So I'm going to find that in here. Inside here, this is the edge. This is the edge in here. And that comes down through here. And so this is all just about like the planes of a rectangle, y'all. Through there. This is here. This is here. This is here. Like that. This is here. So this helps to create dimensionality within our drawing. Sorry, my computer crashed. So many fun technology issues today. Okay, let me see if my iPad will work on my. Yay, it just kept recording. How cool is that? What a smart application. See if my iPad will work now on my other computer because it said it updated. Let's see if it actually updated. Hooray! Okay. Do I still have everybody?
Yep, we're
Okay, thank you, Douglas. Okay, Whew. What a morning of technology, let me tell you. Okay, so now here we go. You ready? So now we should have some type, what we're thinking about are two things. We're thinking about hard structures versus soft. Okay. And so we're thinking about planes, so sides versus top or bottom. Okay. And then we're thinking about proportions, and ratios. Okay. So these things help us to kind of like think about our positive structure. But one of our biggest things that we have to our advantage is our negative space. Okay. So what we're going to talk about now is how to figure out like some of this information about negative spaces, because I don't think we've really talked a ton in a while. I think when we did still life, we talked about envelope and exterior measurements, but I don't think we've talked about it for a little bit. So let's talk about that because it's a big part of figure drawing. So hopefully you got some type of hand structure, okay, with that last drawing. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and we're going to, this is really, do not be underwhelmed by what I'm about to ask you to do. Okay, it's just going to help you to do something easily. Take your hand and you're going to trace the contour of your hand, spread your fingers apart, and just trace the contour, like put it on your page, like I'm going to put mine on my screen, and just trace the contour. I have a reason. We're not making turkeys. That's about all I can get on my page, but there you go. This is all I want you to do. Now, we can see when we do that, and you should be doing this on mixed media paper. We can see when we do that, we create positive form or the illusion of positive form by identifying it with the idea of a line, right? A contour line. What we want to think about are the angles here, okay? So the angle from here to here, here to here, here to here, here to here, the outmost points, even in here, down to like there. Now, when we do that, we create these negative spaces. Oh, not gonna work. Like here's a negative space. Bloody hell. Okay, so there's a negative space. There's a negative space. There's a negative space. There's a negative space, and here's a negative space, okay? Now, negative space is measurable, and it's citable, and it can help us create accuracy. So the citing of an angle is, I believe we've done this, but just to cover, and again, in case that was the other class I was teaching at Cornish, you will take a tool, something straight in your non-dominant hand, and use this to find angles. So, sorry. You're gonna hold it up to the thing you're drawing, close the eye that is the furthest away from the measurement tool. So like my left arm, my left eye, and find the angle. And then on your paper with the other hand, draw the angle, and then bring this over to see if they are equal. Don't do this. right? Don't move the angle, because if you do it, you've lost it. So this is where standing up to draw is really helpful, because you can lock your arm and then just move it over. Okay. One thing you don't ever want to do when you're doing this is to measure an angle and bring it to your paper and use your measurement tool like a ruler and draw against it, because it's not going to give you an accurate reading, because when you draw, you push, and when you push, you change the angle. Okay, so measuring and sighting is one of the most important processes in drawing from life that we have. It's hard to teach online, and I know that even if I just begged and begged and begged, a lot of my students would never stand up. Here's the reason why standing is helpful. It's because you can move without unlocking your arm. And if you place yourself about an arm's length away from your drawing, then you never have to move forward or back. Okay. If you are seated, try to measure and bring it down without moving it. And you're going to notice very swiftly how difficult that is to do. So do what you will with that information. When we identify these outside angles, that helps us to create our envelope. Okay. And the envelope is created by the furthest exterior angle. So that was just a little thing. Let's do it without tracing our hand. Okay. So what this would entail, I'm going to take my hand, hello hand, and I'm going to put it in front of me. I'm going to close my fingers, open my fingers, I don't know, I'm going to do something with them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by drawing the angle of my arm. Okay, that helps me to discover my wrist. Then I'm going to put in like my trapezoid shape for the top of my palm. Looks like this. Then I'm going to use my little ratios in my mind. There is equal to here. Here is equal to there. This is a little shorter. It should be more like that, is equal to this. This is equal to this. And then this here is equal basically to this here. Okay. Now, I'm going to take my measuring tool. I'm going to line it up visually like here to create this angle. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to lay it against my angle on my page and move it up to see if it matches the angle on my hand. If it matches correctly, then that tells me that it's true. If it doesn't match and I have to push it or subtract or do something differently, that tells me that my angle is incorrect and I must make it correct. So I'm going to go here to here. Means that finger needs to be longer. And I'm going to measure, draw, measure, check. I'm going to always be measuring and checking, measuring and checking. That looks pretty good. That means this is too long. And then from here to here has an angle. That. Okay. All right. Here we go. So now what I want to do is I just want to bring in my rectangles. Okay. Something like that. Now the large knuckle is going to come through here. It's a curve. Then my second knuckle is going to come through here. It's a curve. Remember 1 to 1, 1 to 1. Oh, I forgot. We could also measure outside here too. Go ahead and lightly just color in that the negative spaces you created. Okay. Then you can take your blue pencil and looking at your hand, you can start to look to see where you can see the different planes, like here on this edge. I can see the plane here. I can also see that this needs to have a bit of a curve to it. Here I see a little bit of the plane on both sides because it's more centralized to my eye right now. Then over here, it comes in through here. And I see the plane over here, down here into that palm. And then here, and then I have that funky thumb, so it's gonna come here. And I can just kind of have like go in there and identify these darker edges. Yeah. Now the reality is that if I get this negative space in here correct, because I use the envelope angles out here, my hand will be accurate. Try not to like tell yourself like, oh, that angle's kind of okay, I'll just leave it. Like try to be accurate because that will really help you to get an accuracy in your drawing. Okay. Questions so far? Okay, so you're gonna grab your vine charcoal, grab your erasers, okay? And if you have your chamois, you can grab that. Okay. So let's just start off with, I have this giant charcoal. Let's just start off with a finger together using values. So go ahead, tone your paper. Maybe I should tone this. Okay, so our paper is toned. Let's just start off with a finger. Go ahead and use the side of your charcoal. And like, let's just make a shape that's a rectangle of a certain length. What length you decide. Now, halfway through there, right? And halfway through there. Something like that. Now, this is a really old kneaded eraser. It's like very brittle. Go ahead and lift out light on the top. Like that. Okay. Now, you can kind of blend. Yeah, something like that. Go back, lift out the light. Like that. And you're gonna round it here. Round it here. Round it here. And then here you're gonna bend up, bend up, bend up. This is place markers, placeholders. With the fingernail, you're gonna curve down and pull up, and then in there, you see it's gonna go dark here, light, light, and then back there, dark. Don't draw a line around it. I don't want you to draw a line around it. Think about the thickness of the eggshell. And then here, you know, we definitely have darker areas for the knuckles, so you can put some dark in and then use an eraser to lift out some lights. It's not just dark lines, y'all. Same thing here. Lift out some lights. And then similar here, you know, up here we also have a knuckle. Lift out some lights. So that's just like our basic finger, right? Take a picture of that so you can upload it, wipe it away. Kind of had, that's interesting, where I erased has gone dark. Neat. So now let's just look at more of a hand. So we're going to draw the wrist and the arm. Shape, like a trapezoid shape, like that. And then from here to here to there. So then we have our fingers in here. And here we have our thumb. and then just lift out our lights. That's one finger. There's two fingers. 3, 4. Top of the hand. So, like that. Find the negative space between you kind of manipulate through here with your finger if you want. Put the light coming from here, the darker side on that side. Harder, 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 harder. Soft. Now the next thing to do if we were working from a hand, which I admit that I'm not, I'm just working from memory. Would be to find our angles from here to here, here to here, here to here, here to here, and check those. You could also find the angle from here to any protrusion out here. Okay, go ahead and erase that. Okay. I have a textile next to me here that's going to a museum in January, and I probably should not be using charcoal right away. Should make a note of doing such silly things like that. Okay, so like let's look at the idea of like maybe like doing like a fist. So you see what I'm thinking about here is the knuckle shape. And then the top of the palm. Down through the wrist. And so what we want to think about is the relationship of the top of the palm to the arm. So here, I would look at sort of trying to define the outside contours. First, I would then think about my proportions from here. So that's the arm. That's the top of the wrist here. Top of the palm. So then, do I have tendons that are visible or bone? If so, lift them out. And then if my light is coming from, sorry, if this is my left hand, then I would see my thumb maybe a little bit in here, tucking inside there. Like that. Okay. And so then my job would be to like figure out, you know, here's my wrist, like, and it's kind of like this. You can't really see it. It's like that. So where is the light hitting and where do we see dark? So if I actually look, my light is hitting here. My light is hitting here. And then I have light hitting here, like that. And then a lot of this is actually pretty smooth. I don't really see any tendons or bones sticking up. And then in here, I have some light there and some light here, and that kind of curls around like that. And then out here, that would be much smaller. And then this would be more angular. So inside here, I'd be looking at something like that. And then there's like a dark space in there. And then it comes out. And then this comes out, comes down, goes actually in here. That. So if this is light, then this is going to go dark. 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 Something like that. It's better straight on. You can't really get it straight on. That's more straight on. I'm sorry, there's a bit of an angle and it's pointing upwards, so some distortions happen. So none of these would be finished, right? These would all just be the beginnings of exploration, just math-based, value-based drawing. Now, the other thing is like, now our paper is toned, we could also, like if I do something like this, I could also just use my eraser and start off my drawing. Wrist. This is light in here. This is really light in here. Okay. It comes back through here. Then I have this finger here. And then I have light inside here. And then I have light inside here. Like that. So just the lights. Then I can go in and say, okay, well, I have dark here. I have dark in here. I have dark in here, especially with so much charcoal on my hands. It's dark in here. Comes down to here. I have dark here. Coming in through here. Coming through there. So one of our goals here, y'all, is to like try to take away this idea that the hand must be like this very static, hard, crunchy form. And instead, like just break it down into some really simple lights and darks. Okay. So then further refinement would be a measurement from there to there, a measurement from there to there, a measurement from there to there, and a measurement from there to there, checking the negative space in here. Checking all of this negative space, like so. Question?
I have a question.
Sure.
What's the purpose of drawing the negative space?
The negative space, so in the envelope style drawing like this, the negative space like would be part of the measurement system. So like when we look at that negative space in the drawing, its purpose, right? Our purpose as the drawer would be to match it accurately to that which we see. And so it's another way of thinking about form. Form is defined visually, like when you actually look at a form, you're looking at differences. And one of the biggest differences that you're going to see is the difference between positive and negative space. It is the fact that there is a certain amount of negative space around the positive form that allows you to see the positive form. So we apply the dark value in there. You wouldn't have to do it necessarily on a refined long drawing, but the purpose of applying the value in there is because the next step after the negative space and the measuring, the next step would be to start to fill out the forms and to look at like the contours with the fingers. And so you would be using the negative space as a dark value to help you define the contours of the fingers that you see.
I see.
Yeah, great question. It's just a trick. It shouldn't be there in the final. Like if this was going to be refined to a final level, it wouldn't really be there. But this is all related to this idea of the envelope.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. Other questions? Okay. I love when I don't get questions on like the hardest thing to draw. I don't have to keep drawing it then. Haha. So in the end, it really does all boil down to like the relationship of these, those proportions that I presented to you. Okay. Go ahead and draw a hand on your own. We'll do like 10 minutes to do that. Go ahead and draw a hand, one of your hands in charcoal on your own. Okay, so 10-minute drawing. Those of you watching the video, 10-minute drawing of your hand using charcoal. Try to focus on proportions, and I would like you to include and leave the exterior angle measurements you create. Okay, so I want to see both the hand and I want to see the exterior angle measurements that you use to define the location of fingers, and then go ahead and fill in the negative space with the charcoal to help differentiate the negative space from the positive forms. Okay, 10 minutes, please.
Okay, I kind of lost track of time, but I think that was maybe 10 minutes. Okay. What do we think? Like, how did that go?
Good.
Okay. Everything seemed to make sense.
Yeah, it helped.
Okay, cool. Okay. So we have one last thing that I want to cover. And so that's going to kind of like reduce, I was going to look at all your drawings, but I think just, give me a few moments after class to make this discussion boards and post them, and then I can have a look to see what you've done. Oh, was it? Oh, geez, it was recording that whole time I took that break with you all to do your drawing. Okay, so we are going to do one last thing. So make sure you take a photograph of the drawing you just made so that you can upload it to the board. Okay, and here we go for the last thing. This way. Okay. Whoopsie. Okay, so wipe away that drawing. I have to like kneel on the ground to draw now. Okay. Here we go. All right, so you should now have a pretty nicely toned piece of paper. And what we are going to do is I just want to talk a bit about just like relationships of size between like your different skeletal elements. I don't think we've talked about this, and we need to. And so this is where we will pick up on Wednesday. So those of you watching at home, if you can come to these last two sessions, that would be really helpful. I understand if you can't, I will continue to record them, but definitely make sure you watch them all the way through so that you can complete your final exam. Okay, go ahead and just start with a drawing of a straight line like that. Okay, so we've got your straight line. Okay, that's going to be like your plumb line. Okay, it's also going to be your median line, which is anatomical name for a line that runs through your body. It's an anatomical line that defines your defines your left or right side. So go ahead and mark the top and the bottom of that line, and then divide this line into 7 equal sections 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then just add a half to it, about 7.5. So your body is about 7.5 heads high. Okay. Now, if you take this section here, get that measurement and put that here and here, it's usually about like 1 head or so from the sternum to the shoulders. Okay, so just go ahead and in here, we're going to get the head. So just put in an egg. You can even just shade it in with math. Okay. There's usually 1 head to the nipples. Something like that. 1 head from the nipples to the belly button. 1 head from the belly button to the bottom of the pubic arch. Okay, about halfway between the belly button and the nipples, we're going to put in the rib cage. It's basically an egg, then it comes up there. Okay. Now, different breast sizes have different drops on the nipples, but you know, still these relative ideas kind of are a great starting point. So then here, above the pubic area, you're going to make like a an oval, and basically like a little bowl for the pelvis. On you know, assigned male at birth individuals, the pelvis is tall and narrow. On assigned female at birth individuals, the pelvis is wide and shorter. You're going to come down from here. This is the great truncator. You're going to come down the femur about halfway there. Is going to get you to the knees. This will get you to your ankles, and then this is your feet. Out here, you have the rotator cuff, right, for your shoulder. The middle, like where your elbow is about the same as where your belly button is. And then if you draw straight down, your hands are about halfway down your thighs. Sorry, it's in an angle, but it's what I've got. Now, go ahead. Just to add some dimensionality to this form with some math. Okay. You can kind of like go in there, and right now it looks like a robot from like a sci-fi. You are inferior. That is why you must go. I'm rewatching The 100 right now. So good. So good. Highly suggest The 100 if you haven't watched it. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's define the head. Something like this. Okay, so it's kind of flat on the top, and then angle to the chin. The line through the middle is the median line. We can redefine that. We come down the neck to the clavicle, which tells us that these shoulders are going to be too high because they're going to come about here. Okay, so then we said 1 head to the nipples, so we're going to get some nipples in here. Give the individual breasts. Okay. Then we're going to come in. If this is going to be more of a female form, we're going to come in and then out again for the hips. Like so. So go ahead and so in, so down at an angle in, down at an angle out. Excuse me, charcoaly. Out, in, like that, and then the hands in there. Same thing here. In, out, in, hands. Okay, if this is the nipples, then the belly button is here. And again, the pubic arch will be about here. I'm going to go out, in, in, curve. Yeah. And then forward for the feet. Like a little robot person. Let's pull our light from the upper right-hand corner. So this side be lighter. Okay, lighter through the neck, sternomastoid. The shoulder will be lighter onto the breast. This side of the breast over here will be lighter. Okay. This side of the arm and here will be lighter. This part of the forearm will be lighter going down. Probably some light out here. This is going to be lighter, basically all the way through here, like that. Abdomen lighter, shadow for the breast, top of the pubic arch in there, lighter, dissolve. Okay, this side of the thigh will be lighter into the calf, the foot, something like that. This side of the thigh will be lighter, calf, foot, something like that. Now, I bet you can't guess what this all relates to. If you're thinking an egg, you're right. Okay, our light's coming from here. Light transitions into dark, transitions into reflected light, transitions into reflected light, transitions into shadow. That's all that's happening throughout the figure here. So if you can draw this, you can draw this. Okay, wipe that away. Take a picture, wipe it away. You know, I like to just have you upload everything you've done. Okay, same process. Plumb line, assign top and bottom, divide into 7 equal sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Sorry. If you have to extend, that's fine. If you like what I did, just lap your way through. So the head's going to come to about there. This will be the shoulders. Okay, something you could do here would be find the angle from the top of the head to the shoulders. Okay. So down the spine, we said it was about halfway between the nipples and the belly button. Okay, and then we said that we had the pelvis about here. And we had the great truncator to the knees, patella, tibia, fibula, to the heel, which is your calcaneus. Sorry, it's a bit cut off, but. There we go. Sorry, everybody, it's not the best thing. So back of the skull, that's going to be occipital, patel, sorry, not patel, parietal, I don't know where I got patel from. Then we would see the mandible, cervical vertebrae to thoracic vertebrae to lumbar vertebrae to sacrum to coccyx. So your curves of your spine, here's the back of the skull. Cervical goes in, thoracic comes out, lumbar goes in and out, sacrum goes down to the coccyx inside. Seven, 12, 22, 5. Sacrum and coccyx are just fused together. Vertebrae. You always remember that you have 12 thoracic vertebrae because you have 12 ribs and each one has a rib. Okay, and then out here you've got your rotator cuff for your shoulder, humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals to phalanges. Great truncator, femur, tibia, fibula, calcaneus. Your pelvis is made up of the ilium on the top and the ischium on the bottom. The ischium has a hole like that. And then the back of the pelvis is the sacrum and the coccyx. Boop, 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 boop. Your 5 true ribs, 7 false ribs, 2 of the 7 false ribs are floating ribs. So they're not connected to the rib cage, but they're connected to the thoracic. People will also call the thoracic vertebrae the dorsal vertebrae. So then let's just fill this out. Be a great place to find angles there to there. Okay, what's the angle here to here to here? What's the angle in here where this little negative space is? Angle here to here to here. Angle here to here to here. Okay, so now you can start to see how those angles can help you to create structure. Buttocks, right, would have a little bit of a crease. Lumbar usually has a little bit of a shadow. Out here you have your scapulas. Then you have the back of your thighs. There's usually that little bit of a dimple, which is the interior of the patella. Sorry, yeah, why do I keep saying patella today? I don't know what's wrong with me. The patella. Let's see. Something in my brain. Something like that. Okay, take a picture, erase it. Last thing for the day. So those figures we just drew before, that's early classical sculpture, the Kore and the Koros. Now let's look at later, the high classical period with the contrapposto. Okay, so shape for the head, it's an egg. Okay, come into the neck, shoulders at an angle. Okay, cervical, and then in the back we have our thoracic to our lumbar. Okay, now the pelvis is going to go the opposite direction. And then the leg that is highest is going to hold our weight. The leg that's in front is going to be balanced. This arm, of course, would be lower. This arm, maybe it's pointing to Zeus. Hey, it's Zeus. This S shape is contrapposto, which is kind of the naturalistic way that we stand. Most of us do not stand like very, like a stick, right? Especially today, we all have bad posture. And so this is basically the invention of the difference between, the Kore and the Koros of the first wave of sort of ancient Greece sculpture. We see them do something really unique later in that period where they step forward. And by stepping forward, they break the rectangle. And then by High Greece, we have this. And then, of course, this is further explored by the Romans, particularly in the Hellenistic period. So when you're looking at somebody who's bearing weight, you want to find the weight-bearing leg versus the balancing leg. That's going to change the pelvis. That's going to change the shoulders. If you don't believe me, stand up, put your hands on your hip, and lock one knee and let the other knee relax. So here then you would just find sort of like the basic shapes, the rib cage, kind of an egg, pelvis, kind of an egg, bones are kind of rectangles, feet are kind of eggs, rectangle, rectangle, egg, rectangle, 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 egg. Okay. So concludes today's lesson. questions so far? Okay, the next assignment you have due is your planar, sorry, your planar portrait recreation based on an image from my Pinterest. Again, if you select something that's not on the Pinterest that is in the handout, then make sure that you get that image approved by me, email it to me and ask for approval. Something big that I saw, y'all, in all of the work that was submitted for the self-portrait was honestly a lot of not reading the directions thoroughly. Okay, really look at each assignment's directions, and that's that's for everybody. It's hard. I don't like making blanket statements, but I would say out of the 43 students I had about 28 submissions, and out of the 28, it might have been a bit higher, like 30 submissions. I had about 8 that didn't include any hands, and I had about 6 that included only 1 hand. And then I had some people even submit drawings, which I don't understand how that happened. So make sure that you're really reading the directions. I try to be very thorough. There's sometimes small differences, like ThickBlick this time gave you, whatever, an ebony pencil instead of a layout pencil. But I do think usually they're pretty accurate. And then if you have any questions, email me. Don't just turn something in wrong. Give me a holler. Let me see if I can help you. Okay, everybody, off you go, and I'll see you all on Wednesday.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Professor, I have a question.
Sure.
Did you want us to upload the red and blue color of our hands as well?
I just upload whatever so that I can see how it went. That's all. If you don't have them, that's fine. It's just meant so that I can actually see what people are getting from the class.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Professor.
Yeah.
Quick question, so you gave some suggestion for the ice drawing, right? For me, at the beginning of our class. So do you want our to redraw the art, the drawing, or like the 2 point, what it could?
Yeah, you can resubmit them if you got an A or anything close to an A, I wouldn't worry.
Oh, right. I get it. Thanks.
Okay. If you got like a C or something, then I would redo it. Or B. But one of the things I try to do is create lots of things that are in here meant to be like helping you. Like these 10-point-a-day discussions are meant to kind of help, help your grade. And so unless you're seeing unless you got like a really lower grade, I wouldn't make sure you understand that.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.